Kael Thorne had seen battlefields in every color of the known spectrum, but none quite like this. The forests of Virelia didn't burn in fire, they shimmered in pain. Each crystal bloom along the ground glowed with sickly light, fractured by plasma fire and scarred from kinetic bursts. He moved carefully, his boots disturbing the bioluminescent moss as he crossed what had once been a sacred grove, now little more than a graveyard of silence and echoes. His tactical display flickered, distorted by interference from the crystalline atmosphere. The advanced recon suit he wore was state-of-the-art, its stealth tech designed to mask thermal and sonic signatures. But nothing could hide the chill creeping up his spine. Something was off. Not just the energy readings those were expected, but something deeper. Something quiet. The war was over. Or at least that's what Command claimed. A ceasefire had been declared between the Terran coalition and the fragmented factions of Virelia. But ceasefires didn't clear forests of mines. Ceasefires didn't erase the residual hum of energy weapons buried under roots. Ceasefires didn't explain why Kael's heartbeat kicked up when the wind passed through the trees like a whisper of something watching. He paused, scanned. A flicker. 2 meters ahead, half buried in a thicket of violet flora, something shifted, a shimmer, not aligned with the movement of wind or light. Kael raised a hand, instinctively, pulse rifle silent but ready. He advanced his body, moving on instinct, each step placing weight exactly where the suit compensated. Then he saw her. Tiny. So impossibly small, he thought it might be a decoy drone until he noticed the slow, shallow rise and fall of her chest. She couldn't have been more than 20 inches tall, her lavender skin glowing faintly against the emerald undergrowth. A tangle of fine silver lavender hair fanned out like light thread, and her body was wrapped in a strange iridescent armor. No, not armor. More like ceremonial wear. Biometallic, it shimmered in hues that shifted with the ambient crystal resonance. Kael knelt, heart pounding now for reasons he didn't quite understand. His visor adjusted to scan vitals. Life signs weak but present. Biosignature Ithari, native to Virelia. But this wasn't a soldier. This was someone vulnerable. He reached out. Her eyelids fluttered open, iridescent, galaxy-filled eyes locking onto his face with sheer terror. A flick of her hand summoned a feeble glow from the tiny crystal woven into the clasp of her outfit, but the energy flickered out instantly. She gasped, her lips parted. "Please," she whispered, her voice barely a breath, but melodic in its fear. "Don't devour me." Kael blinked. "What?" "Just please, I'm not seasoned. My skin's bitter, I promise." For a moment, silence. Then Kael let out a short, incredulous breath, half laugh, half disbelief. Not because of her fear, he understood that, but because she had delivered it like a child making excuses to a storm. Her voice had cracked, not with panic, but resignation. She genuinely believed she might be eaten, and it broke something in him. Kael deactivated his visor, with a thought revealing his face. His brown eyes met hers directly, his voice low, firm, and slow. "I'm not here to hurt you. I'm not going to eat you." She stared, frozen. Her hands no bigger than insects pressed to his gloved fingers. "But the stories." Her lip trembled. "The tall ones devour. When we're found, we vanish." "I don't care what the stories say," Kael murmured. "You're not vanishing today." Carefully, reverently, he slipped his hands beneath her delicate frame. She weighed less than a field ration. Her skin against the suit radiated warmth, faintly an echo of something alive and luminous. As he lifted her, she closed her eyes, trembling, expecting judgment or consumption. Instead, he shifted her gently into the crook of his palm, holding her like something priceless and breakable. "You have a name?" he asked. Her voice came soft, reluctant, but clear. "Nyari." "Nice to meet you, Nyari. I'm Kael. Let's get you out of here." She didn't respond, but her gaze never left his face. There was something new now beneath the fear, a question forming in her expression. Not about his intentions, about his nature. Kael turned and began walking, eyes scanning for extraction points, though he knew no evac ship would be coming. Command didn't want him interfering with local life forms, especially not ones like her. But he wasn't about to leave her here trembling and abandoned in a battlefield that didn't know peace. "You're hurt?" he asked. She hesitated, then nodded weakly. "I was gathering resonance moss for our healing chambers. A crystal surge triggered a cave collapse. I think I hit my head." Kael adjusted his grip, holding her closer to his chest, shielding her from the breeze now whispering through the trees. "Rest," he said. "I'll carry us to safety." "I don't understand you," she murmured. "I get that a lot." "No," she said, voice heavier now, weighed down by confusion. "Your kind doesn't stop. doesn't look back. But you didn't even hesitate. Kael didn't answer. He just kept walking deeper into the forest of light and shadows toward whatever came next. Behind them, the crystal trees hummed faintly, as if they too had witnessed something they hadn't expected. The forest thickened as Kael pressed deeper into the heart of Virilia, the bioluminescence shifting from cold turquoise into warm ambers and rose golds. Every crystalline leaf seemed to pulse in rhythm with Nyari's shallow breaths, as if the world itself were watching her condition. She lay curled in the crook of his left palm, her arms drawn tightly to her chest, but the trembling had begun to ease. Her breathing grew steadier, though Kael could still feel her uncertainty through the way she flinched at each distant sound, the whine of a discharging crystal vent, the distant thud of some long-fallen spire. She spoke again, voice tentative. "You shouldn't be here." "That's funny," Kael replied, "because I was just thinking I'm exactly where I need to be." Nyari tilted her head, strands of her hair catching the ambient light like spun starlight. "You don't even know me. I don't need to know your whole story to know you didn't deserve to be left here." A pause, then a soft sound, barely a breath of a laugh. "I think you're strange, Kael. I get that a lot too." They passed beneath a hanging arch of vine-like crystal fronds. Kael brushed them aside with his forearm, careful not to jostle her. His other hand gripped his plasma rifle, tightly scanning for movement. The ceasefire might have ended open conflict, but hostile remnants didn't always follow rules of peace. He'd seen enough ambushes disguised as silence to keep his guard sharp. "Where are we going?" Nyari asked. "Shelter. There's a collapsed observatory about a kilometer east of here. Crystals thick enough to dampen sensor scans. Hopefully no one thought it was worth looting." Nyari nodded slowly, then added, "If we make it there, will you still stay?" He glanced at her. "I'm not leaving you, Nyari." The words hung between them, simple, declarative, irrational. Kael knew that. So did she. "I know we're not supposed to be allies," he said, "but screw supposed to. You were left behind. That's all I need to know." "You keep saying things like that," she whispered, curling her fingers into the padding of his glove. "Things that sound impossible." Kael adjusted his grip, subtly cradling her closer as they wove between pillars of stone and crystal. "Then maybe it's time someone started showing you the impossible's not always bad." Another silence passed, but it was softer now, laced with warmth. When they reached the ridge overlooking the shattered observatory, Kael crouched. The dome had cracked inward like an eggshell, its inner crystalline lining glowing faintly under the haze of dusk. It looked deserted, but that didn't mean much. He activated his suitor's proximity scan. "Low energy signatures, minor wildlife, no hostiles. We'll camp here tonight," he said. "Then I'll figure out what's next." He slid down the embankment landing with barely a sound. As he crossed the open ground toward the observatory's remains, Nyari stirred. "You could have ignored me," she said quietly. "Your people don't interfere with ours. That's your doctrine." "I've never been much for doctrine," Kael replied. He found a hollow in the shattered foundation and set his gear down. Inside, the remnants of a Virilian star map glowed faintly on the walls, flickering, as if it were trying to remember the constellations it once reflected. Kael sat down with his back to a chunk of broken paneling and opened a ration pack. "Hungry?" he asked. Nyari blinked, then gave a skeptical look. "That smells mechanical." "It is," he said, pulling out a heated protein bar. "But it won't kill you." She sniffed cautiously. He tore off a tiny corner and held it out to her on the tip of a spoon. She hesitated, then leaned forward, touched the edge of it with her tongue, and blinked in surprise. "Salty, not terrible." "High praise," Kael chuckled. He took a bite of his own chewing slowly. Nyari had curled up again, this time against his forearm instead of his palm. When he glanced down, he found her eyes fixed on his face. "You don't act like the story said," she murmured. "What stories?" "Yours. The ones about humans. You're supposed to be ruthless, loud, unfeeling, hungry." Kael raised an eyebrow. "Hungry?" She blushed. "I mean, metaphorically. Or literally. Some tales blur the lines." Kael laughed. "We're complicated. That much I believe." She yawned then, a tiny sound like a whisper through wind chimes, and curled up fully against his sleeve. Her breath brushed faint warmth against his wrist. "Sleep," Kael said. "I'll watch." "You already are," she murmured, and then drifted off. Hours passed in near total silence, broken only by the soft sounds of Virilian night fauna and the slow humming of the observatory's forgotten machinery. Kael stared at the shattered sky through the broken dome and wondered how something this simple, rescuing a girl no bigger than his hand, could feel like the most important thing he'd ever done. As the crystals pulsed gently around them, Kael couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental had shifted, that something was beginning, something he didn't yet understand but could no longer walk away from. Kael awoke to a flicker of light, soft, warm, and rhythmic, casting pale pulses across the broken observatory walls. For a moment he thought the sun was rising. Then he realized the glow came from Nyari. She hovered just above his forearm, cross-legged on a shard of fractured crystal, surrounded by a sphere of gentle energy. Her hands were spread palms upward, and the crystal embedded in her chest piece pulsed in time with the light. She wasn't levitating, not physically, but she existed in a space that felt removed from the world around them. Deeply attuned, alive with resonance. Her eyes opened slowly, locking onto his with a calm intensity. "You're awake." "I think I've been awake for a while," Kael murmured, "but that's the first thing I've seen that made sense." Nyari gave a small smile. "I was testing the ley line flow. The crystals here are old, very old. They remember things. Memories imprinted into the lattice. Pain, hope, loss. It's how we heal." She lowered herself back into his open palm. Her presence sent a pulse up his arm, not energy, but something more primal. Recognition. "Kael," she said, brushing her fingers against the base of his thumb. "There's something below this place. A chamber, a core nexus." His brows furrowed. "A power source. A heart," she corrected. "It's called the Prism Hall. It predates my people. The Aethari used to commune there, exchange energy, sometimes more." Kael felt the weight behind her words and understood immediately. A bonding chamber. She nodded. "Why are you telling me this?" Nyari looked down, her voice lowered, hesitant but steady. "Because something is coming. I saw the shimmer in the forest. Crystal surges don't just happen. Crinth beasts are migrating again. The ceasefire may hold, but Virelia isn't at peace." Kael sat up fully now, his pulse rising. "And the chamber can help. It might. But it doesn't activate unless there's a shared resonance." Kael tilted his head, shared how she met his eyes. Biological, emotional, psychic. Two entities. Linked. The chamber bridges them. The silence that followed was thicker than night. "You're asking me to bond," he said finally. "I'm asking you to survive," she replied. "And to let me survive with you." He stood adjusting his suit. "Then let's find that chamber." Nyari nodded, her fingers gripping his wrist with a subtle tremor of trust. The journey into the Prism Hall required descending through spirals of fractured staircases where bioluminescent spores drifted like weightless snowflakes. Kael's HUD flickered with erratic readings, magnetic interference, biological surges, radiation spikes that seemed to ignore the laws of physics. But Nyari walked without hesitation, her small form cutting through layers of time and resonance as though the crystals parted for her presence. At the final threshold, they stood before a vast archway, its outline pulsing with every heartbeat Kael didn't know he was holding. "This is it," she whispered. The moment they crossed the threshold, the chamber responded. Not with violence, but with hunger. Not to devour, but to bind. The walls lit with pulses that mirrored Kael's own vitals. The floor beneath them shimmered like liquid crystal. It was beautiful and terrifying. Kael turned to Nyari. "What does it want?" She stepped forward, her bare feet pressing against the prism floor. "It wants consent." She reached for his hand. Her fingers were impossibly small, but her gaze was unwavering. "You can walk away now," she said. "But if you stay, this will change us both." Kael looked at her. Not her size, not her species, but the way her voice didn't shake despite the stakes. The way she had looked at him under that tree when she thought he would devour her and still spoke to him with honesty. The way she hadn't begged or pleaded, but offered. He took her hand. The moment they touched, the chamber reacted. Light cascaded around them in a torrent violet silver white. The crystal beneath their feet vibrated with frequencies Kael could feel in his bones. A sudden weightlessness overtook him, and then silence, but not empty silence. A stillness filled with her thoughts, her breath, her emotions flickering like heat trails behind closed eyes. "You're inside me," her voice whispered, not in sound but in thought. Kael could feel her panic, her resolve, her awe. It mingled with his own. "This is mind resonance," she said. "It goes deeper than words. We're merging interfaces. Biology, spirit, instinct." Kael staggered as a sudden flood of memories surged through him, not his. Images of Nyari's home, her people the first time she touched a resonance crystal, her laughter, her shame, her hope. In return, she felt his pain. The battlefield memories, the orders ignored, the comrades lost. His choice to save her wasn't chance. It was the culmination of every rule he'd broken for something worth protecting. In the center of the chamber, a pedestal rose from the floor, shimmering and translucent. Nyari floated upward, drawn by the energy. She turned her head toward him, her hair swirling in slow motion. "We don't have time for tradition," she said. "The chamber needs a genetic anchor. I must sync my crystal signature to yours. All of it. Mental, physical." Kael knew what she meant. No words were exchanged. No need. Only consent offered in the space between thoughts. She drifted toward him, glowing brighter, her small hands pressing to his chest. The warmth spread. Not heat, not fire. Fusion. Light consumed them both. When it faded, they were still there, Kael on his knees, breathing hard, Nyari lying unconscious in the crook of his arm. But something fundamental had shifted. He could feel her, not just physically. She was inside him now, not invading, not occupying, sharing. The pedestal pulsed once, then retracted. The floor solidified. The prism hall went dark, its purpose fulfilled. Kael stood slowly, holding her gently against his chest. A whisper flickered at the edge of his mind. "I trust you, Kael." And for the first time, the war-forged soldier whispered back, "I won't let you fall." The forest outside the prism hall greeted them like a different world. The sky had shifted to a burnt amber, casting everything in a golden haze. But it wasn't just the time of day. Kael felt it in his skin, in his bones, the way every crystal bloom seemed more vibrant, more alive. As if the world itself had acknowledged the change. Nyari stirred in his arm. Her eyes opened slowly, glowing faintly with residual crystal light. Then she blinked, sitting upright in his palm, testing the edges of her movement. "We did it," she murmured, then looked up at him with a ghost of a smile. "You're still here." Kael chuckled. "Where else would I go?" She looked down, fingers trailing the seam of his glove. "The bond, it's permanent, Kael. There's no off switch now. My energy is threaded through yours. I can feel your thoughts brushing mine. I can feel your heartbeat." Kael exhaled slowly. "Same here. Every time you breathe, I know it." She nodded. "That will matter, especially now." Movement snapped both their attention to the tree line. The underbrush rustled. A tremor rolled beneath Kael's boots, followed by a sound he remembered all too well. A guttural screech that seemed to reverberate inside the skull. "Crinth beasts!" Kael spun, drawing his rifle instinctively, but Nyari's voice cut through the moment like a blade. "No," she set her hand against his wrist. "You don't need it." "What are you talking about?" "Use me, Kael. Use us." She leapt onto his shoulder, her tiny hands gripping the collar of his suit. As her skin made contact, a ripple of energy surged through his spine. His HUD flickered again, this time not with error, but integration. Sync-initiated resonance pathway active. Ethari interface detected shared consciousness. Link stable. Kael's vision doubled, then sharpened. For a moment, he saw the world in overlays, tactical markers, and red crystal harmonics, in pulsing waves of violet. He saw the Crinth beasts before they even emerged, their crystal armor resonating with aggression. 3 of them. Larger than the ones described in old war reports. Their claws shimmered with red overcharge energy, driven mad by the same frequency that once protected Nyari's people. Now, Nyari whispered, "Let's see what we can do together." Kael didn't think. He felt. His arms moved in perfect harmony with the pulses of energy that flowed from Nyari's hands into his suit. His steps adapted to her foresight. When he turned, her presence turned with him. It was no longer human strategy layered over alien intuition. It was fusion. The first Crinth charged. Kael dropped low, raising both hands not to fire his weapon, but to channel. Crystal energy surged from his palms in a spiral of force, striking the creature square in its core. The beast screamed a sound like shattering glass and collapsed, overwhelmed by the amplified feedback loop they'd created. Nyari pressed her palm to his neck. Feel the vibrations. Focus on their rhythm. The second beast came in low, using its hind legs to leap. Kael twisted his body, reacting to Nyari's unspoken prediction. He ducked and rolled, then thrust his arm upward in a punch, not of flesh, but of pure crystal force. The impact threw the creature backward into a tree. Splinters of crystal exploding outward like a localized supernova. Kael was panting now, not from exertion, but from the intensity of shared sensation. He could feel her excitement, her fear, her fierce joy, all layered within his own adrenaline. They were 2 beings, but they moved as one. The third creature hesitated. It circled them, pacing slowly, its jagged limbs skimming the ground, carving furrows into the glowing moss. Then it screeched and lunged. Kael braced. Nyari's arms gripped tighter, and together they didn't attack. They invited. The moment the beast struck, Kael extended both arms, creating a resonance field. Nyari poured her crystal frequency into his core, her song matching the scream of the monster. Instead of colliding, the energies merged momentarily before rejecting each other violently. A sonic blast erupted from the impact, sending the beast reeling into a nearby pillar. It collapsed in a heap of glittering shards. For a moment, the forest was still. Kael dropped to one knee, exhausted. That was new. Nyari's laugh was breathless. That was us. He reached up, gently cupping her in both hands. Her glow was fading now, the energy stabilizing. She looked up at him with wide, glittering eyes. Do you understand what we've done? Kael nodded slowly. We're a weapon. No, she whispered, pressing a hand to his chest. We're a key. Her words hung there, luminous in the air, and then faintly the wind changed. Not just the temperature or direction, but the music of it. The crystals around them began to hum a different tune. Softer, smoother, harmonized. Kael stood cradling her gently. The world's responding. Because it recognizes balance, she said, and it wants more. From deep within the forest, more creatures stirred, not Krinth beasts, but watchers. Eyes in the crystal. Echoes of a civilization long dormant. Kael didn't know what was coming next, but he knew one thing: he wouldn't face it alone. News of their resonance didn't stay confined to the forest for long. By the time Kael and Nyari reached the outer perimeter of the Athari's hidden enclave, a city woven into a crystalline canyon, the air itself shimmered with awareness. Every bridge of light, every spiral tower carved from the canyon walls thrummed in reaction to their presence. Not out of alarm, but recognition. A bond had been formed, and the planet knew it. The Athari elders had been waiting. They were not tall. They were not imposing. But they radiated a pressure Kael could feel in his marrow. 5 of them sat on seats grown naturally from the canyon's inner lattice, their robes etched with glowing filaments that pulsed with a tempo matching the living crystals around them. He stood at the center of the chamber, Nyari perched gracefully on his shoulder again, but no longer hiding behind his collar. You bring a new resonance, said the center elder, his voice like water over stone. One not heard in 10 lifetimes. Nyari bowed. We didn't seek it, but we answered when it called. Another elder leaned forward. You activated the Prism Hall. Kael spoke this time firm and clear. She would have died otherwise. We made a choice, together. A choice, murmured a third. Or a consequence. Nyari's tiny hand touched Kael's cheek. He felt the pulse in her thoughts. Stay calm. The Krinth beasts attacked again, Kael said, but this time we repelled them not with weapons, but resonance. Through the bond. We're not a mistake. The elders fell into a hush, each absorbing the statement not just with ears, but through the vibrational field that filled the chamber. Crystals along the walls mirrored their thoughts in faint oscillations, some skeptical, some curious. Then the head elder stood. His body was fragile, his skin nearly translucent, but his gaze carried the weight of eons. There is an ancient right, he said, the right of twin echoes. It can make the transformation permanent. Your link, her size, your shared energy. But the path is severe. Kael exchanged a look with Nyari. Her nod was immediate. What do we have to do? 3 trials, the elder said. The trial of trust, the trial of harmony, and the trial of unity. Pass them all, and your bond will reshape more than flesh. It will reshape history. Kael stepped forward. Then we began. The chamber itself changed in response. The floor cracked with luminous lines folding downward into a spiral of shifting crystal bridges and mirrored walkways. A maze unfolded, vast, alien, impossible to memorize. Trial of trust, a chorus of voices intoned. Navigate the maze as one, a single mind, a shared will. Nyari leapt from Kael's shoulder and landed in front of him. Her crystal pendant began to glow. As it reached its peak luminescence, she grew, her body elongating, forming, stabilizing until she stood at his side, equal in height, every inch of her bathed in ethereal glow. She reached for his hand. Ready to let me into your mind, Commander. Kael took her hand, their fingers lacing. Been living there since the forest. The resonance surged. Suddenly, he was no longer alone in his thoughts. Nyari's consciousness layered over his own, not intrusive, but complete. They saw through each other's eyes, felt each other's hesitation, strategy, warmth. They ran. The maze reacted immediately, walls closing paths, shifting. Kael's combat instincts wanted to analyze and anticipate, but Nyari's intuition came in flashes, emotions like ripples, guiding them through forks, illusions, traps disguised as options. "Trust me," she whispered inside his thoughts. "Always." They leapt a glowing chasm, rolled under a falling barrier of blade crystals, and turned just in time to avoid a collapsing bridge. The final turn opened into a platform ringed in floating shards. The elders' voices returned. Trial of harmony. From the shards, crystal constructs formed figures made of pure light and mineral humanoid, but faster than any soldier Kael had faced. "They're linked," Nyari said. "We must be too." The fight began. They moved in tandem, Kael parrying Nyari, countering with crystal pulses that disrupted the construct's cohesion. When Kael dodged left, Nyari attacked right. When he ducked, she released a burst above. Each move harmonized by thought, not word, but the battle intensified. Constructs adapted. Their strikes came faster. Kael began to falter, not from exhaustion, but from emotional bleed. Nyari's fear, his own self-doubt, their frustrations. They were too connected. The link started to unravel. Then Nyari gripped his hand again, not for energy, but focus. "Remember the first time you held me?" she asked silently. Kael smiled through gritted teeth. "You thought I was going to eat you, and you carried me anyway." The memory surged between them, a tether woven in defiance of logic. With it, the harmony returned. They struck as one. The final construct shattered into spirals of color. The chamber dimmed. "Trial of unity," the elders announced. The ground shook, crystals cracked. A storm of resonance built around them. "Maintain perfect emotional synchronization," came the command while under harmonic overload. The pressure was overwhelming, thoughts blurred. Their bond buckled. "Don't let go," Nyari pleaded. Kael pulled her close. "You're not just part of me, you are me, and you are mine." Their lips met not for passion, but for balance. Energy exploded around them. Crystals ignited. Their bond snapped into focus so sharp it silenced the world. When the light faded, they stood together hand in hand, whole. The elders reappeared, their tones reverent. "The rite of twin echoes is complete. The bond is permanent. The transformation eternal. The future unwritten." The world beyond the trials was no longer the one they'd left behind. Kael and Nyari emerged from the resonance chambers into a forest reborn. Where once the trees trembled in fear of the Krinth beasts, now they shimmered with equilibrium. Crystal spires that had sung in discord now pulsed with a warm, measured frequency. Even the air was different, denser, yet lighter. Charged. Balanced. They walked side by side, her newly permanent form radiant in the rising light of Virelia's twin moons. The glow of the pendant on her chest had settled into a slow, steady heartbeat, one that echoed his own. And their thoughts still intertwined. Not a storm, not a blur, just a steady undercurrent. A sense of being two distinct minds that moved as if one. As they approached the village's highest ridge, the Etheri greeted them not with ritual, but quiet awe. Children darted from spires to get a glimpse of the pair. Warriors stood at attention, then bowed not to a soldier or a counselor, but to something new, something hopeful. Kael had never imagined himself a symbol, and yet here he stood, hand in hand with a woman born of light and crystal, remade by a bond that should never have been possible. The elders met them in the grand convergence hall. "You've brought us proof," the head elder said, "that the bond was never a myth, that harmony can be chosen. And not just between our kinds," Nyari added softly, "but between our pasts and our futures." Another elder stepped forward, producing a pair of crystalline pendants, each one shaped like two interlocking helixes. "With these, your harmonics may shift across scales, for diplomatic reasons and perhaps more personal ones." Kael raised an eyebrow. "You mean size control?" Nyari stifled a laugh, fingers brushing against his wrist. "We'll have fun with that. We propose a new role," the elders continued. "Ambassadors between our species. Ithari and Terran, bonded, balanced, living proof of what the future might hold." Kael glanced at Nyari. "What do you think?" She turned toward this council, her eyes alight with the galaxy-swirled shimmer they'd had since the moment he first saw her. "I think we were never meant to hide." That night, in their newly grown crystal dwelling perched at the edge of the canyon, Kael leaned back against a structure that hummed with comforting frequency. The architecture responded to their presence, resonating warmth, adjusting opacity, sealing windows against the cool mountain air. The stars above shimmered through the crystalline dome, each one refracted in dozens of colors. Yari emerged from the adjoining chamber barefoot, her robe shifting with bioluminescent patterns that responded to her breath. She walked to him in silence, curled into his side, and rested her head against his chest. "Do you hear it?" she whispered. He closed his eyes. Not her voice, but the quiet echo of unity, a resonance not from within, but between. "I do." They sat in silence for a while until she murmured, "I've been thinking." "That's dangerous." "Very," she teased. "But I wonder what the resonance would be like with a third presence." Kael's heart stopped. Yari smiled into his shoulder. "Don't panic, Commander. I just mean one day. Not now." But the crystal threads change when something new is added. A shared child, maybe. Between worlds. Between frequencies. Kael tilted his head to look down at her. "Is that even possible?" "It wasn't," she said. "Until we were." His arms pulled her closer, and the crystal dwelling pulsed gently around them in perfect harmony with their thoughts. A harmony that Virelia had not seen in generations, and now would never forget. And so the tale of Kael Thorne and Nayari the soldier and the Crystalborn echoed far beyond the forests of Virelia. What began as a chance encounter in a shattered grove became a bond that rewrote biology, rewired ancient machines, and rekindled the possibility of harmony between worlds. Through trust resonance and a love that defied logic, they proved that even in galaxies ruled by power and fear, connection was still the most potent force of all. Across the stars, others began to listen. Human and Athari scientists reopened sealed relic sites. Diplomats studied the bond between crystal and flesh. And in the quiet moments between peace summits and scientific breakthroughs, two beings once separated by size and suspicion simply stood together, equal, united, in love. Perhaps that's all the galaxy ever needed. If you felt something stir in your heart, if you imagined the hum of the crystals, or the heartbeat shared across palms, then don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. This helps the story reach others who might need a little light in the dark. Share your thoughts below. What did this resonance mean to you? And remember, sometimes all it takes is one choice to hold out a hand instead of pulling a trigger. We'll see you in the next story.